At 4:15 a.m., a Ukrainian drone lifted off with no plan to return. 10 hours over Russian airspace and the most defended factory awaited. What happened next redefined modern warfare. On August 9, 2025, while the sky was still dark, a single drone lifting into the air. It moved with a purpose through misty Ukrainian skies, heading toward one of Russia's largest military drone factories. This place was infamous. Every month it produced hundreds of drones that rained destruction across Ukrainian towns. For many, it was untouchable until now. This drone carried a mission that wasn't meant to come back. But first, it had to survive the next 30 seconds, a dangerous gauntlet of radar and cannon fire waiting to greet it. Almost immediately, it passed a Ukrainian air defense post. Everything about the drone looked like a typical Russian attack. An operator, tense and alert, watched his radar scope. On his screen, the calculations blinked rapidly. 8 kilometers out, 94% hit probability. The twin 35mm cannons on his self-propelled anti-aircraft gun were ready to fire. One press of a button and the drone would be shredded in seconds. But something didn't feel right. The operator remembered the briefing from midnight. From 4:20 a.m. to 4:30 a.m., any aerial target flying at 150 meters and around 150 kilometers per hour had to be ignored no matter what. No explanation was given for this strange order. His watch ticked. 4:19 a.m., 1 minute until the window opened. 4 kilometers and closing fast. The fire control system was calculating every second, predicting exactly where the drone would fly. Every training he had had told him that no drone could survive a tungsten storm at this range. The shells were filled with hundreds of tiny projectiles designed to explode in the air and create a deadly cloud. Yet the instructions were clear. Hold fire. As the drone drew closer, the operator studied its profile. 12-meter wingspan, twin boom structure. It looked like a Bayraktar, a type the Russians had used against Ukraine before. One of those captured drones had struck near Bakhmut last month using Russian flight patterns, but this one didn't behave like that. It followed Ukrainian protocols, heading toward enemy territory. By 5 kilometers out, the clock struck 4:20 a.m. The window was active. If this was a captured Russian drone, he had only seconds to react. The system's probability read 94%, almost certain destruction. But something about the drone didn't match any previous threat. Its movement, speed, and altitude were all carefully measured to avoid friendly fire, but deliberately exposed to enemy guns. He saw it clearly. This wasn't a Bayraktar. It was an AN-196LOY drone. That realization hit him like a punch. Ukrainian forces had launched this at dawn for a strike, not at 4:15 a.m. in dangerous low altitude. It wasn't coming back. This mission wasn't just risky, but suicidal. The drone passed overhead, disappearing into the dark sky above Russian territory. By now, morning reports were already starting to reach command posts. Observers along the border were puzzled. Slow-moving drone flying at 50 meters, straight eastward, ignoring all electronic challenges. Nothing could explain its calm, relentless pace. By 6:30 a.m., the sector command in Bryansk had received multiple anomaly reports. Posts along the border described the same thing. A lone drone moving straight toward Nizhny Novgorod and beyond. Toward Alabuga, not a single evasive move, not a flicker of signal. The duty officer acted immediately, deploying the Pole 21, a mobile jamming system designed to neutralize drones. The Pole 21 was formidable. A 15-meter antenna on a truck radiated over 1,000 watts of electronic noise, creating a 20-kilometer bubble where satellite navigation was almost useless. To a drone, it was like trying to hear a whisper next to a jet engine. At 6:34 a.m., the AN-196 entered the jamming zone. The operator expected it to hesitate, but the drone held its line. Seconds passed like hours. At 3 seconds, a tiny wobble. At 5 seconds, still holding course. At 10 seconds, nothing changed. It didn't circle, retreat, or give the slightest sign of yielding. The operator switched to spoofing mode, trying to deceive its navigation, but the drone pressed on, unshaken. The whole scene was tense, almost unbearable. The AN-196 moved like a ghost, unstoppable and invisible to conventional defenses. It moved like it could think, weaving through fire, radar, and jamming with the precision of a pilot who'd have done it 100 times. By the time the first reports reached command, confusion and disbelief spread. But the drone didn't care about odds. Observers couldn't identify it correctly at first. The flight profile didn't match any known enemy behavior. By 7 a.m., it had vanished into enemy territory, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and shocked defenders. No one at the observation posts could explain it. And yet, for the Ukrainians who planned it, every second had been anticipated. Russian operators expected the drone to suffer confused navigation. Their Pole 21 system wasn't just blasting noise anymore. It was sending fake locations, tricking anything in the sky into believing it was hundreds of kilometers away from where it actually flew. Normally, a drone would panic, drift, turn, or slowly wander off course until it emptied its fuel tank. But the Ukrainian drone didn't react. It didn't drift toward the false coordinates the jammer pushed at it. Instead, it kept gliding east, calm and focused, as if the fake signals didn't exist at all. When analysts later reviewed its path, they understood why. The drone wasn't relying on satellites. It wasn't following a strict set of digital commands that could be jammed or spoofed. It had something different, something much smarter. Instead of locking onto a single feature like a railway line, which Russia could easily watch, the drone used the land itself. It treated the terrain like a map drawn in bold ink. First, it followed the M3 highway for a stretch exactly the section with the wide S-curve near the town of Seltzer. No other road in that region bent quite like that. When it recognized the shape, it shifted direction 15 degrees north, just as programmed. Next, it tracked the long row of power lines cutting through open fields. The drone knew the crossing point had to be the 3-span bridge, not the shorter 2-span one downstream. Another unique landmark. Another checkpoint that couldn't be faked by digital interference. Each feature the drone followed was chosen because it was impossible to mistake. No false signal could trick a machine that was literally looking at the ground beneath it. For years, Russia spent millions refining their jamming systems, building stronger towers, beefing up electronic noise. But Ukraine had bypassed all of it by giving the drone a simple rule. Use your eyes, not your ears. By sunrise, the alert spread north. The S-400 battery stationed near Nizhny Novgorod received the warning. Inbound drone, estimated to pass their zone around 9:45 a.m. Farther east, Alabuga's commanders were told they might be dealing with a long-range strike. Their early confidence was low. This kind of mission didn't match known Ukrainian capabilities, but the notice still went out. By 8 a.m., Russian electronic warfare crews realized they were dealing with something unusual. Their systems were tracking a drone that shouldn't exist, flying with perfect accuracy through a zone where GPS simply didn't work. Every landmark it passed brought it closer to Alabuga, where thousands of Shahed drones sat in storage waiting to be launched at Ukraine later in the month. At 9:45 a.m., the S-400 battery near Nizhny Novgorod finally spotted it, but only because the drone briefly climbed to clear a patch of rising terrain. That short climb placed it high enough to appear on the radar's horizon. The system tracking it, known to crews as the Gravestone radar, was one of Russia's most powerful sensors. Its large panels held thousands of transmitter modules, sending out enormous bursts of energy, enough to detect fighter jets hundreds of kilometers away. Against a 3-square-meter target, detection reached around 250 kilometers. But the Ukrainian drone wasn't the size of a fighter. Its radar profile was tiny, barely half a square meter. That reduced its detection range drastically, far more than most operators like to admit. At low altitude, with the curve of the Earth helping to hide it, the drone remained invisible until it climbed just high enough for a clean reflection. Once it appeared, the radar locked instantly. Slow UAV, bearing 262 degrees, distance 89 kilometers. The crew labeled it as a possible Bayraktar-type drone. Though the location made no sense at all, Turkish-made drones had a known limit of about 300 kilometers. This one was already 900 kilometers from Ukraine. Understanding the next steps required knowing how the S-400 system worked, alongside the Pantsir batteries around it. The S-400 specialized in striking large, valuable targets, faraway jets, bombers, cruise missiles. Each missile from that system cost a fortune, around $2 million. They weren't meant for a single slow drone. That's where the Pantsir came in. It covered the close-in protection layer. The S-400 would detect the threat early and classify it, then pass the target down to a Pantsir battery for the actual engagement. The Pantsir's guns and short-range missiles formed the tight ring of defense that nothing was supposed to slip through. By late morning, the Ukrainian drone had reached the range of the Pantsir batteries. These systems worked with the S-400 radars, combining long-range detection with short-range firepower. Their 30mm autocannons and smaller missiles shared radar data, creating overlapping fields of fire. Together, they were supposed to form an almost impenetrable wall. But there was a flaw in the geometry. The Pantsir's guns couldn't depress below -5 degrees. At 4 kilometers out and 50-meter altitude, The drone needed an angle of -7 degrees to engage. Essentially, it was flying literally under the guns. The expensive missiles, designed for high-value targets, were reserved for jets or incoming cruise missiles, not a small, fast, low-flying UAV. And the autocannons were too short-range to reach it at that altitude. The AN-196 descended back to 50 meters, vanishing into the radar clutter near the ground. Ground clutter is the bane of radar operators. Trees, buildings, hills, and uneven terrain bounce radar signals in every direction. Screens fill with static, noise, and false reflections. And in that chaos, a small drone disappears like a needle in a haystack. The overnight supervisor made a routine log entry, possible UAV bearing 087 degrees, assessed as reconnaissance. Lost in ground clutter. No action taken. By 10:15 a.m., the day shift arrived and began reviewing logs. 40 kilometers past their position, the drone had already advanced. The new operator scanned the horizon, but morning thermals often created false returns. He dismissed it. Meanwhile, the warning to Alabuga was updated. Confirmed drone approach. High confidence. Arrival estimated 11:50 a.m. By 11:47 a.m., the counter-drone station had been tracking the inbound threat for hours. Bryansk had reported GPS jamming failure at 6:30 a.m., and Nizhny Novgorod had logged radar contact at 9:45 a.m. Now the drone was 8 kilometers out, climbing to 250 meters, and flying straight at them in broad daylight. The system they faced was the repellent one, a counter-drone system designed specifically to disable UAVs. Its directional antenna focused 500 watts into a 30-degree cone, overwhelming any drone receiver within 2.5 kilometers. The onboard computer contained 10,000 command protocols, every standard drone command, every Turkish military frequency, NATO standards, Ukrainian protocols, even Chinese commercial codes. Every possible override was programmed in. The operator activated the system. 500 watts of electromagnetic energy blasted toward the drone, cycling through all 10,000 commands in 4 seconds. Every possible command flashed at the drone, but the AN-196 continued unchanged. Straight, level, mechanical, unstoppable. Next, the system tried a frequency hopping attack, targeting precise channels at microsecond intervals. Even encrypted military systems could glitch under such conditions. Drones that previously believed themselves jamming resistant would sometimes fail here, but the Ukrainian drone didn't. It stayed on course. The SER-VSS-5 GPS spoofer broadcasting false satellite signals at strength levels far higher than real GPS. It created a phantom location 500 kilometers away and slowly tried to guide the drone toward it. Every GPS-guided drone would have turned or hovered in confusion. The AN-196 didn't. Analysis of its flight revealed why the operators couldn't stop it. The drone was following visual landmarks, not satellites. Optical navigation compared real-time imagery with stored maps. The drone was essentially blind to all electronic interference. It didn't need GPS, radio, or signals of any kind. As the Ukrainian drone continued, all stations attempted simultaneous barrage jamming. 14 jammers activated, creating an electromagnetic storm from 100 megahertz to 6 gigahertz. 50 watts per megahertz of pure noise should have crashed any processor. But the drone's computers were wrapped in aluminum Faraday cages. The processors ran flawlessly, completely shielded from the chaos around them. Waypoint 1146 passed. The drone began its terminal dive to 1147. By high noon, the AN-196 punched through the anti-drone mesh at 180 kilometers per hour. The steel grid, designed for 5-kilogram quadcopters, sheared instantly against 700 kilograms of aircraft. The thermite warhead did its work with terrifying speed. Iron oxide combined with aluminum to produce molten metal and temperatures over 2,500 degrees Celsius. Fuel tanks ruptured in tenths of a second, creating an enormous overpressure. Within 2 seconds, 50 drones detonated in sequence. 8 seconds later, the warehouse roof began failing. 15 seconds in, the north wall blew outward. 30 seconds after impact, all 5,500 Shahed drones inside were destroyed. The resulting fireball climbed 800 meters into the sky. Windows shattered up to 5 kilometers away from overpressure. 6 months of production, $500 million of Iranian drone technology, vanished in under a minute. One long-range drone had rendered sophisticated air defenses useless, proving that in the era of autonomous warfare, the most expensive systems could do nothing against a machine that refused to hear them. If you want to witness every daring move, every high-stakes decision, and every moment that changes the battlefield,